I want to thank you first for coming out to our 2017 Black History event. And to start out the program, we will have a poem by our very own Dr. Tiffany Grant. And our poem is in regards to family. And soon following will be our keynote speaker, Dr. Leticia Bates. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. I was asked to select a poem on family, and I thought I'd find one that was a little bit more unifying considering what we're dealing with in today's time. This poem is called Human Family by Dr. Maya Angelou. I note the differences in the human family. Some of us are serious, some thrive on comedy. Some declare their lives are lived as true profundity, and others claim they really live the real reality. The variety of our skin tones can confuse, bemuse, delight, brown and pink, and beige and purple, tan and blue and white. I've sailed upon the 7 seas and stopped in every land. I've seen the wonders of the world, not yet one common man. I know 10,000 women called Jane and Mary Jane, but I've not seen any two who really were the same. Mirror twins are different, although their features jibe, and lovers think quite different thoughts while lying side by side. We love and lose in China, we weep on England's moors, and laugh and moan in Guinea and thrive on Spanish shores. We seek success in Finland, are born and die in Maine. In minor ways we differ, in major we're the same. I note the obvious differences between each sort and type, but we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Don Jason. I'm the clinical informationist for the University of Cincinnati Libraries, and it's my distinct honor to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Leticia Bates. Dr. Bates is a tenured professor in the University of Cincinnati's Department of Sociology. She is a Chicago native who conducts research and publishes peer-reviewed papers. These papers focus on topics such as inequality in education, racial and ethnic achievement gaps, resource gaps in schools, and other socioeconomic outcomes. Dr. Bates is also writing a book about the enrollment practices of Cincinnati's magnet schools. Dr. Bates has been regarded as an expert in her field, and she has served on panels and has been quoted in articles on topics such as parenting and policing. Dr. Bates arrived at the University of Cincinnati in 2009. Since that time, she has made numerous contributions to the university. She is a co-founder of the Black Faculty Association, a group that strives to connect and empower Black faculty here at UC. She serves as a mentor to students both in her department and in the African American Cultural Resource Center. She encourages these students to explore their interests in sociology and social justice. In 2016, Dr. Bates was recognized for her social justice efforts. She earned a Dean's Award for her stellar achievements in teaching, research, and leadership on campus. So without further delay, I turn the floor over to Dr. Leticia Bates, who will present on her course, Sociology of Black Families.
I don't think it's up. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Good, what is it, afternoon? It's been a long day already. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Don, and to the libraries for having me. I'm going to try not to kill myself because I like to move when I talk, so I'm going to try not to kill myself right here with this cord. So again, thank you guys for having me to have the opportunity to talk about my course, Sociology of Black Families, and to have an opportunity to talk about some of the things that we do in the sociology department. I know that I stand between us and food and us and painting, so I won't be before you very long, but I do want to talk about a couple of things. And the first is, what is sociology? I want to talk about what I do in my Sociology of Black Families courses, because I teach it at both the undergrad and the graduate level. why what I do and what other social scientists like me who study these very specialized, marginalized communities, why what we do is important, and then what we learn about Black families and Black family history through social sciences and courses like mine. So what is sociology? What do sociologists do? This is a question that most parents ask their children as they tell them they want to major in sociology, right? It's one of those social sciences where parents go, you're going to still be broke when you get out of school. So what do? We study the human and social relationships with institutions. Specifically, we try to understand how human action and consciousness shape or impact cultural and social structures, as well as how social and cultural structures shape and impact human consciousness. As a sociologist, most of my work, like most other sociologists, is very social justice oriented, and we're really concerned, for the most part, no matter what area of sociology we study, with understanding and bringing about practices that enable us to have a socially just society. So what you're looking at, it's funny, I was just having a conversation with somebody about lots of text on PowerPoint slides, don't do it. And then I did it. But it's important, and that's what we all say when we do it. But what you're looking at here is the course description for my course, and I'll read it to you. Sociology of Black Family, a plug for my courses, the undergrad 2095 and the grad 7073, explores the socio-historical context of Black families in the U.S. In that course, we examine the trends in family formation of Black families as well as various family forms. So we talk about single mother families, single father families, extended family formations, grandmother-headed households, the entire gamut of family formations. The course also examines the influence of social institutions. Any institution you can think of, we cover it and how it impacts Black family life. My most favorite part of teaching both courses is the use of social media. One of the things that we are tasked to do as faculty, as educators, is to really be contemporary in our teachings. We believe very strongly that the work that we're teaching is important and useful, but we have to make sure that students buy into that as well. So one of the things that I've done to adapt, if you will, to the increased use of social media and media at large is I include a media component in both of my classes. One of my most favorite assignments, I have created a list of sitcoms that portray Black families, any sitcom here in the U.S. And I have, starting with one of the very earliest ones, Julia, which portrays Miss Diane Carroll as a Black single mother, the first positive depiction of Black single mothers in media, to modern day sitcoms like Blackish. My students are tasked with picking sitcoms that appear in different decades and creating a critical analysis of the treatment of Black families in the media. By the time students are done with my course, the expectation based on what we cover in the course is that they should be able to articulate and critically analyze policy, research, and understandings of Black family in the media and at large. So I expect my students to be able to have some critical analysis of how we understand policy and how they impact Black families, for example. And this is important because we know that family has been seen as the cornerstone of society. They're standing on the corner and they can't speak English. I can't even talk the way these people talk. Why you ain't, where you is, what he drive, where he stay, where he work, who you be. This is one of my favorite quotes, a Twitter post about the use of this language. I'll go on to continue to read. And I blamed the kids until I heard the mother talk, and then I heard the father talk. Everybody knows it's important to speak English, except these knuckleheads. You can't be a doctor with that kind of crap coming out of your mouth. In fact, you'll never get any kind of job making a decent living. People marched and were hit in the face with rocks to get an education. And now we've got these knuckleheads walking around. The lower economic people are not holding up their end of this deal. These people are not parenting. They're buying things for kids, $500 sneakers, for what? And they won't spend $200 for Hooked on Phonics? I'm talking about these people who cry when their son stands in front of them in the orange jumpsuit. Where were you when he was 2? Where were you when he was 12? Where were you when he was 18? And how come you didn't know he had a pistol? Where is the father? Or who is the father? And if people are putting their clothes on backwards, isn't that a sign that something's gone wrong? People with their hats on backwards, pants down around their cracks, isn't that a sign of something? Or are you waiting for Jesus to pull their pants up? Isn't it a sign of something when she has her dress all the way up and got all of these piercings and needles and things going through her body? What part of Africa is that from? We are not Africans. Those people are not Africans. They don't know a thing about Africa. With names like Shaniqua, Taliqua, and Muhammad, and all that crap, and all of them are in jail. Brown or black versus the Board of Education is no longer the white person's problem. We have got to take the neighborhood back. People used to be ashamed. Today a woman has 8 children with 8 different husbands, or men, or whatever they call them now. We have millionaire football players who can't read. We have $1 million basketball players who can't write 2 paragraphs. We as black folks have to do better. Someone working at Walmart with 7 kids, you are hurting us. We have to start holding each other to a higher standard. We cannot blame the white people any longer. This moral judgment passed on black communities and black families by Mr. Bill Cosby in his speech at the 50th commemoration of the Brown v. Board of Education decision is not unique. It's quite ironic that it came from Mr. Bill Cosby. We could talk about that at another time, though. This moral shaming, that's a whole nother talk for a whole nother day, right? But his sentiment is not unique, and it didn't start with Mr. Cosby, this moral outrage at black families. Black families have been portrayed as a tangle of pathology. The most famous report on black families was written by, at that time, then Labor Secretary Mr. Daniel Patrick Moynihan in 1975. And he says, and I quote, "At the heart of the deterioration of the fabric of the Negro society is the deterioration of the Negro family. It is the fundamental source of the weakness of the Negro community at the present time." In this report, he goes on to talk about things like high divorce rates, high out-of-wedlock births, high number of female-headed households, high rates of welfare dependencies, absent fatherness, and the problem with matriarchal families. This has been the harshest criticism lauded at black families. A fundamental fact of Negro American family life is the often reversed roles of husbands and wives. These families have been depicted as criminalized and suffering from women being in charge. Let me be clear. Some of the things that Mr. Moynihan, Senator Moynihan, as he died in 2003, talked about are of grave importance. So I'm not going to act like he can't be saying that stuff. We can't be talking about the divorce rate. We can't be talking about absenteeism, parental absenteeism in families, because there are some grave conditions happening in Black America. Black families are in poverty at a much higher rate. In our community, we do have a higher rate than other non-black families of single mother families. So let's keep it real. Let's not pretend like these issues aren't problematic, right? So we don't have a problem with talking about the issues in the community. But what we have a problem with is the lens through which black families are treated. In his report and other works from sociologists, Mr. Moynihan was in fact a trained sociologist. He went on to teach sociology at Harvard before he died. The issue here is the treatment of black families as culturally deficient. You are in these circumstances because there is something culturally about you that makes you this way. A number of theorists and scholars have used this culture of poverty theory to talk about why black families are in the situations that they're in, basically saying that it doesn't matter what programs we have, they're culturally deficient. They don't know any way. They can't learn another way. The values and norms that they hold are so counter to mainstream norms that it doesn't matter what we do. And this has been the rhetoric that has been aimed at black families that becomes problematic. So what Mr. Bill Cosby failed to acknowledge in his moral argument, and even to a lesser degree, what Mr. Moynihan failed to acknowledge, and I say to a lesser degree because if you actually read the Moynahan Report and read it in great detail, it's not that despicable a piece of work. He actually talks about the importance of governmental programs to help black people come out of poverty. He talks about the importance of those things. And I say not that despicable because he does do some victim blaming, but he does talk about the impact of governmental programs to turn the tide, if you will. But what they fail to really pay attention to is the structures. So even those families that subscribe to these mainstream norms of two-parent households, we still find black two-parent households in poverty at a much higher rate than white two-parent households. And so even though the concerns are real, what we have to be very cognizant of is the lens and the label through which we understand and talk about these differences. Writers like Patricia Hill Collins, who will be here at the university on February 17th as part of the Cincinnati Project Symposium. It takes place on Friday, February 17th from 9 to 2 over in the AACRC. Am I telling the truth? Okay. And Dr. Collins will be here. But black sociologists like Dr. Patricia Hill Collins and Dr. Andrew Billingsley really are not so much critical of the assessment of the problems in the black community, but the assessments of what we miss when we don't focus on trying to understand these things. Four of the things that they point out actually about the mistreatment of black families in white social science is that there's a failure to account for the working and middle class black families. So when these researchers are doing this research on black families and they're finding these deficits, if you will, the vast majority of the population that they're studying are not upwardly mobile families. One might imagine that we find different outcomes if we search across different class statuses. The second thing is the lack of attention given to household arrangements, particularly the diverse household arrangements in black families. And I'll talk about that in a second here. The other thing is the blurring of concepts between households and families. Given the diverse household formations and arrangements between black families, we have to be very careful when we're distinguishing between units of analysis between households and families, because they're often very blurry in black communities. And the fourth thing, and as I just pointed out here a second ago, is the underemphasis on racism and discrimination that continues to force and perpetuate poverty in the black community. So what do we learn? What do I hope students learn when they're done with my class? Can never be sure, but my goal is the importance of the importance of socio-historical context. Socio-historical context is very important. If you did not know that black folks were not allowed to marry during slavery, you might not understand why the marriage rates for black folks are lower and have historically been over time. If you did not understand that during slavery, black families were often torn apart, parents were sold away from their children, children were sold away from their parents, husbands were sold away from their wives, you might not quite understand why extended kin and fictive kin, play cousins, are so important to the black community. Socio-historical context is important. I'm doing this thing where I'm learning to market myself. And so I'm going to talk about socio-historical context for a quick second and market myself. I am teaching a sociology of Beyonce course right now. And she has this lyric, I got hot sauce in my bag, swag. And it's a lyric. And it's fun. And it's cute. And everybody's singing it. But we lack socio-historical context to understand why this is more than just culturally fun right now. Does anybody know why black folks might have been carrying hot sauce in their swag bags, as Beyonce puts it? Anybody? Miss Geneva. I know Miss Geneva knows.
because when they went out places to eat, the restaurants and things didn't have the condiments and things that they liked on their food, so they needed to take their own.
That, and in Jim Crow South, we were not allowed to dine in some restaurants, which means that we didn't get condiments. They didn't have condiments or utensils for us, and so people had to carry their own. And so I want to believe Beyonce is that deep to know that. But I don't know if she is. But that doesn't erase the fact that this lyric, that this point, has a very specific cultural connection, one that comes from the African diaspora, one that impacts black people, right? We could not have condiments in restaurants, so we carry them around in our bags. The importance of socio-historical context and understanding how we make sense of social phenomena. That black families are diverse. And there's beauty in their diversity. We have family structures like no other, right? It's becoming increasingly as this, as the economy is shifting, it's becoming increasing that families are living in extended households, right? We have this boomerang generation where the college kids are coming back to live home with their parents, where people are living longer, and so folks find themselves in what we call the sandwich generation, caring for their children and their parents at the same time, requiring folks to live in extended families. But this is the way that black folks have lived for a very long time in these extended families. And we're very diverse. All of us, all of the blacks, or all of the African Americans, don't live in the ghetto. So all of us don't have to worry about being shot when we come out of our house. We are diverse, and I think that that's a very important point to remember, and I try to make sure that my students understand that and are able to coherently discuss and critically analyze the diversity in black families. That there are structural and institutional barriers that prohibit black families from assimilating to widely held white norms about family, right? And so if we buy into this husband as the breadwinner, wife as the homemaker, that there's a socio-historical time that did not allow for black families to map onto those ideas. And so we adapted, right? Black families are resilient and adaptive. Although we've been seen as highly disorganized, this disorganization is highly organized, right? It's a way to adapt to the challenges that our families have faced here in the U.S. over time. I'll end with a call that has been put out to us by sociologists. Maria Johnson and Dr. Alfred Young Jr., in their study of black fatherhood, implore us, and I'll read this because it's important, to reclaim and repurpose cultural analyses, not by way of reinforcing the pathological what's wrong with black families and fathers, they were studying black fathers in particular, but by shedding much needed light on the ways in which black fathers themselves process and make meaning of their roles and realities. Thank you. Questions? Am I done? Or questions? I don't know. Does anyone have questions? We can practice that part. Well, thank you all so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Bates, for that enlightening presentation on Black family experience. Now we're going to move on to the artist portion of our program, and we'll ask you all to just move over to my left here, your right, and we will paint a Terrence Corbin-inspired hard edge classic. And for those of you who are not familiar with him, he was a former professor here at the College of DAP. So we'll go ahead and move over to this planet. At
All right, how y'all doing today? How you doing? My name is Brandon Hawkins. This is my wife, Nikki Moore Hawkins. We are Soul Palette. We go around different places and teach people how to paint really simple paintings. I feel like every time I say this, these paintings get more and more intricate. So this is about the 5th time I've said that this painting gets more and more intricate. So you guys are about to dive into something a little more intricate. Terrence Corbin was actually a teacher of mine. I went to DAP for a second and had about 3 or 4 studios with him. So doing a Terrence Corbin inspired piece, I've actually kind of seen him do it. So unfortunately, look at the camera lady, say Soul Palette. Soul Palette.
Soul Palette. Soul Palette.